All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely always up at a good deep dive.
Today we're heading north, to Canada.
Oh, interesting. What's going on up in the Great White North?
Well, there are elections coming up, and things are getting pretty spicy between the main parties.
I see. And which parties are we talking about here?
The Conservatives, led by Pierre Poilievre, and the Liberals, who've got Mark Carney now, the economist.
Oh, yeah, Mark Carney, right. I'm familiar with his work, but not so much with Canadian politics.
No worries, that's why we're here. We got a whole stack of social media posts and news articles to dig through.
Perfect. I'm always fascinated by how social media plays into these things these days.
I too. And this one's a doozy. It all started with this Instagram post from Poilievre. He's going after Carney for, get this, wearing expensive boots.
Expensive boots. While campaigning. Seems a bit odd.
Right. Well, kind of. The picture shows Carney playing street hockey with some kids, wearing these, I guess, fancy boots. And Poilievre captions all like, look at this out-of-touch elitist.
Ah, playing the populist card, I see. Trying to paint Carney as disconnected from the average Canadian.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The comments section absolutely blew up. And not in Poilievre's favor.
Oh, some people weren't buying it.
Nope, not one bit. They're calling him out for everything, like being pathetic, all talk, no action.
Sounds like there's some pre-existing frustration with him there.
Yeah, definitely. Others are saying he's a one-trick pony, only knows how to criticize, no real solutions.
That's interesting. So the backlash goes beyond just the boots themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the comments, well, let's just say they're not very polite.
I can imagine. Social media can get pretty brutal.
But it's interesting, right? This anger, it seems to be tapping into a deeper frustration with Poilievre's style of politics overall.
Right. It's like the shoe thing is just the tip of the iceberg.
And it's not just Instagram either. Reddit's on fire, too. There's this whole thread just shredding Poilievre's post to pieces.
What are they saying on Reddit? Anything different from Instagram?
Well, for one, a bunch of people are pointing out that the boots in the picture aren't even the same ones Poilievre mentioned in his caption.
Wow, talk about fact-checking gone wrong.
Right. So many people are taking the time to debunk his claim. It shows how much scrutiny he's under.
And it also highlights how important it is to be critical of everything we see online, not just taking things at face value.
Preach. You got to do your own digging.
Ah.
And speaking of digging, some people are calling out Poilievre's own expensive tastes.
Ah, the irony. Criticizing someone else's spending when, well, you know.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how much a politician's personal wealth affects how people see them when they talk about the economy,
Definitely a valid question. This whole thing is making people think about wealth and image in politics. Like, can a rich politician really understand the average person's struggles?
Good point. But let's not forget the big picture here. There's this whole other thing looming over this election, the U.S.-Canada relationship. And a lot of people in these comments, they're worried.
That makes sense. The global landscape feels pretty unstable right now. What are they saying specifically?
They're concerned about the rising tensions between the two countries. Some even see Poilievre's attacks on Carney as part of this bigger trend, this move toward isolationism and populism that we're seeing in other parts of the world.
That's a worrying thought, isn't it? We've seen how that can play out.
Exactly. They're afraid if Poilievre wins, Canada will become more isolated. And that could really hurt their economy, not to mention their relationship with their biggest ally.
A valid concern, for sure. This isn't just some silly shoe squabble anymore.
No, it really isn't. But, you know me, gotta find some humor in all this. And trust me, the internet delivered.
Oh, I bet. Give me some highlights.
Some people are comparing Poilievre to, like, those annoying kids from school, the ones everyone hated.
Haha, I can picture it.
Right. Somebody even said he's like Randall from Recess.
Oh, wow, that's a deep cut. But it makes sense. Pop culture is a powerful way to express how you feel about someone.
For sure. And then there's this whole other thread where people are suggesting Canadian-made work boot brands for Poilievre, like a whole shopping list.
Huh. So even when they're being critical, they're still showing that Canadian pride.
Totally. But I also think it shows how worried people are about the economy. Like, hey, support local businesses, right? It's not just a joke. It's a real concern.
I see what you mean. There's this undercurrent of anxiety about the future running through all of this.
Absolutely. People are genuinely scared about this election. Like, what if Poilievre wins? Will things get worse? Will they be okay?
It's a big question mark hanging over everything. They're looking for some kind of reassurance, some sign of what the future holds.
So here we are, right? Started with a simple Instagram post about shoes. And now we're talking about the future of Canada.
It's remarkable how quickly things can snowball in the digital age. And speaking of snowballing, we've only just scratched the surface here.
Oh, I know. There's so much more to unpack. So let's dive even deeper into these anxieties, shall we?
Lead the way. What else jumped out at you from all these comments and articles?
Well, one thing that really struck me was, well, a lot of people seem to be questioning if these politicians, Poilievre and Carney, if they really get what it's like for the average Canadian.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, okay, fancy boots aside, do you actually understand our lives?
Exactly. So much of what we're seeing in these comments, it goes way beyond the shoes. It's about the real issues, the things that people are dealing with every single day.
Right, bread and butter issues.
Hmm.
And they want to know what these guys are going to do about it.
Like, what's the plan to tackle the cost of living? That came up a lot. And the lack of affordable housing.
Huge concerns, for sure. It's not enough to just say, yeah, things are tough. People want solutions, not just sympathy.
Totally. They want to know, okay, how are you going to make things better? How are you going to make sure I can afford rent, put food on the table?
Exactly. And all of this is happening, let's not forget, in a global context that's, well, pretty uncertain.
Right. That whole U.S.-Canada thing, it keeps topping up. Like, what impact will all this have on their relationship?
Big question. Some people are saying that, well, if Poilievre wins, it could actually increase the tension between the two countries.
Oh, yeah, I saw some of those comments, too. They're worried that Poilievre's going to, well, fueling that whole anti-globalization fire.
Yeah.
The yes versus them kind of thing.
Yeah, I see what they mean. It's that whole trend toward protectionism that we're seeing in a lot of places. And that could really push Canada toward a more isolationist stance.
And what would that mean for their economy? Could they really afford to distance themselves from the U.S. like that?
Tough to say. But some people think it's necessary, They're arguing that Canada needs to stand up for itself, even if it means being tougher with the U.S. They think Poilievre's the guy to do it.
Wow, that's a pretty different take.
Right.
So we've got people worried about too much tension and others saying they need more tension.
It's complicated. There are no easy answers when it comes to international relations, are there? But it's clear that people are paying attention, they're thinking about the bigger picture, and that's a good thing, right?
Absolutely. It's a sign that they're engaged, they care,
Mhm.
but man, this is a lot to process. I mean, we started with shoes, and now we're talking about, like, global geopolitics.
It's true. But, it's interesting, isn't it, how these seemingly small things, like what someone chooses to wear, can spark such big conversations.
Totally. And I think it shows how interconnected everything is. Like domestic politics, the economy, international relations, it's all tied together.
Exactly. And this whole shoe thing, it's become this symbol of this bigger debate happening in Canada. You've got people drawn to Poilievre's style, that whole shake things up, let's do things differently message.
Such a populist approach, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got others who are like, whoa, slow down. We need someone with experience, someone who's more cautious. And they might be more inclined to go for Carney.
Yeah, he's got that whole steady hand on the wheel vibe, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, looking at all these comments, a lot of people are questioning if either of these guys can really relate to them.
That's so interesting. It's like all this talk about shoes, it's kind of exposed this deeper longing for something more.
Like they want someone who's actually been in their shoes, so to speak.
Precisely. Someone who gets it, who understands what it's like to worry about paying the bills, to feel like the system's rigged against them. Someone who's walked a mile in their, well, maybe not their expensive boots.
Uh-huh. Good point. But it does make you think, how important is lived experience when it comes to leadership? Can someone who hasn't faced those same challenges truly represent the people who have?
It's a tough question. You can have all the best intentions in the world, all the right policies, but if people don't feel like you get them, it's hard to build that trust, that connection.
Right. And without that trust, it's hard to get anything done. So how do we, as voters, navigate all of this? What advice would you give to our listeners who are trying to make sense of this election to figure out who to support?
I think the first step is to be informed, to be engaged. Don't just passively absorb whatever's being thrown at you. Do your research, check out different sources, and be aware of your own biases, those echo chambers we can get stuck in.
Yeah, great point. It's so easy to just surround yourself with information that confirms what you already believe.
Yeah.
But to really make a good decision, you got to step outside of that, hear different perspectives.
Absolutely. Talk to people who have different views, listen to their concerns, try to understand where they're coming from, and be open to the possibility that you might learn something new, that you might even change your mind.
That's such a good point. It's
Yeah.
so easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment, to just react emotionally. But this election, it's about so much more than that. It's about the future of Canada.
Exactly. It's about the kind of country they want to live in, the values they want to see reflected in their leadership. And that's something worth taking the time to really think about, to consider all the angles.
Okay, so informed, engaged, and open-minded. What else?
Don't be afraid to ask tough questions. Challenge the candidates. Push them to explain their positions, to show you how they're going to address the issues that matter most to you.
Yes. Demand specifics. Don't settle for vague promises or empty slogans.
And remember, your voice matters. Every vote counts. So get out there and make it heard.
This is a turning point for Canada, and it's not just about the politicians, it's about the people. It's about what they believe in, what they're willing to fight for. And that's pretty inspiring when you think about it.
It is. It reminds us that democracy is a participatory sport. It's not a spectator sport. It's about being active, being informed, and making your voice heard.
Wow, so we started with shoes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And somehow we've ended up talking about the fate of an entire country.
It's funny how these things happen. You start digging into one little detail and it opens up this whole, like, rabbit hole of bigger issues.
Totally. And, it's not even really about the shoes anymore, is it? It's about this deeper question of, well, how do we know if a leader is really, truly in touch with the people they represent?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's like beyond the policies, beyond the speeches. How do we judge authenticity? How do we know if someone really gets it?
Right. Because anyone can, put on a good show, say the right things. But how do we know if they actually mean it? If they actually understand what people are going through?
And it's tricky because, lived experience is so important. You can be empathetic, you can try to understand, but if you haven't actually walked in someone else's shoes, so to speak, there's always going to be that gap.
Totally. And, it made me think of that Maya Angelou quote, the one about how people might forget what you said or did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Oh, that's a good one. And so true, right? It's about connecting with people on a human level, making them feel seen and heard.
Exactly. And that's what seems to be missing in so much of our politics these days. It's also, like, polished and performative.
Yeah, it's all about image, about winning, about getting ahead. But where's the heart? Where's the genuine connection with the people you're supposed to be serving?
That's the big question. So I guess for our listeners, for the voters out there, how do you cut through all the noise? How do you figure out who's authentic and who's just putting on an act?
Well, I think the first thing is don't be afraid to ask tough questions. Don't settle for easy answers or sound bites. Push the candidates, make them explain themselves, show you their work.
Yeah, don't just take their word for it. Do your own research, check their track record, see if their actions match their words.
And pay attention to how they treat other people, especially those who disagree with them. Because how you treat your opponents says a lot about your character.
So it's about looking for that consistency, that integrity, right?
Exactly. And also, be open to changing your mind. It's okay to start out supporting one candidate and then realize, hey, maybe this other person is a better fit. It's about being informed and engaged, not just digging in your heels and refusing to budge.
It's about being a critical thinker, right?
Yeah.
Not just accepting everything you hear at face value.
Exactly. Question everything, weigh the evidence, and then make your decision based on what you believe is best for, well, in this case, best for Canada.
And remember, every vote counts. This is your chance to have a say in the future of your country. So don't waste it. Get out there and vote.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This has been a fascinating conversation. We started with shoes and ended up talking about the very soul of democracy.
It's amazing how these deep dives always seem to take us to unexpected places. But that's the beauty of it, right? It's about exploring, questioning, and learning together.
Absolutely. And who knows what rabbit hole we'll stumble into next time?
Can't wait to find out. But until then, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
And remember, democracy is a verb, not a noun. So get out there and do it.